You won't believe how far we've fallen. We are living in the most perilous time in human history, a season unlike any that has come before us. A time when darkness isn't just lurking in the shadows, it's marching boldly down our streets, seeping into our homes, and taking aim at our children. Gone are the days when families lived with a sense of peace and security, when communities were bound together by shared moral values, and children played freely without fear under the watchful eyes of neighbors and teachers who honored God. Those days now seem like a distant memory, replaced by a world spiraling into chaos. Look around you. Our world has become unrecognizable. Children are no longer safe on their own front lawns. Parents live in constant vigilance, fearing for their little ones every time they step outside. The internet, once hailed as a modern marvel, has become a back door for evil to enter every home. Strangers with vile intentions can now reach into the hearts and minds of the most vulnerable without even stepping foot inside the door. The digital world is flooded with filth, corruption, and godlessness, and we're all drowning in it. What happened to us? How did we get here? The answer may be far more spiritual than social. What we are witnessing today isn't merely a cultural shift or a generational difference. It is the fulfillment of ancient prophecy. The Bible warned us that in the final days, immorality would reign, and evil would parade itself in broad daylight. And that's exactly where we are. Our world has become a mirror of the days of Noah and Lot, days marked by unchecked wickedness, unthinkable violence, and a total disregard for God's truth. We are no longer just flirting with darkness. We are embracing it. From every corner of the globe, we see a celebration of sin and a rejection of righteousness. Schools are no longer safe havens for learning, but battlegrounds of ideology. Families are under assault, truth is ridiculed, and God is mocked. This isn't just decline, it's rebellion, and the consequences are real. If you're paying attention, you can feel it. Something is shifting, something is stirring. The weight of wickedness is pressing in from all sides. And if we ignore it, we do so at our own peril. This isn't fear-mongering, it's a wake-up call. The signs are here. The danger is real. But more importantly, the time is short. The hour is late, and the world is trembling beneath the weight of its sin. We are standing on the edge of eternity, staring straight into the final chapter of human history. And if the days we're living in aren't the end times, they are certainly a preview of what's to come. In this video, we are going to expose the shocking truth behind the moral collapse of our society. We will shine a light on the spiritual battle raging around us and unveil the prophetic warnings that are being fulfilled before our very eyes. This is not just about politics, culture, or crime. This is about eternity. And you need to know what's really going on before it's too late. Stay with us, because what you're about to see could change everything you thought you knew about the times we're living in. This is your warning. This is your chance. Are you ready? In the stillness of early morning, before the world stirs and the noise begins, I often sit alone with the scriptures open before me, my heart quietly listening for the whisper of God through the ancient words. And time and again, I find myself returning to one particular passage that never stops haunting me, stirring something deep within my soul, Luke 17. In this chapter, Jesus Christ, the Son of God, the Lamb who takes away the sin of the world, lifts the veil on what the final days will look like, and he doesn't speak in vague poetry or abstract prophecy. No. He chooses to speak through the powerful and chilling reminders of two real moments in history, the days of Noah and the days of Lot. He paints a picture not of war or famine or signs in the skies, but of normalcy. That is what strikes me every time. The people in Noah's time, they were eating and drinking, marrying, and being given in marriage. It wasn't chaos they lived in. It was ordinary life. It was a Tuesday, a Thursday, a wedding day, a payday. They were working their lands, enjoying their families, pursuing pleasures and plans. The flood didn't come into a world already in flames. It came into a world full of laughter, transactions, celebrations, and ignorance. Ignorance of God, blindness to their sin, deafness to the warnings of a man building a giant ark in the middle of dry land. They didn't listen. They didn't see. And so, they were swept away, not just by water, but by the sudden hand of judgment that had long been withheld in mercy. And then Jesus draws the same image from the days of Lot. There again, people were buying and selling, planting and building. Business was good. Cities were thriving. There was no sign of fear, no awareness of impending doom. But then, like a thief in the night, fire came down from heaven and consumed Sodom and Gomorrah. These weren't just tales to Jesus. He referenced them to reveal something profound, that the final days of this world will look like that. Not like the apocalyptic movies full of chaos and sirens, but like a beautiful afternoon in the city. Like a summer wedding, like the hum of life where no one suspects anything. And that's the terrifying part. Because in both Noah's and Lot's time, there were warnings. There were righteous men speaking, standing, living differently. Noah, a preacher of righteousness, labored for over a century, building the ark, while the world mocked him. Lot, though far from perfect, was tormented in his soul daily by the depravity around him. He saw the darkness creeping, the moral decay, the boldness of sin. But the people didn't care. They were too comfortable, too entertained, too deep into their pleasures to hear the trumpet sound. And so it will be again. The righteous will be removed, taken out of the way, not because they are better, but because they are marked by God, sealed by faith, called by grace. And once they are gone, judgment will fall swiftly. I think of this often, how it parallels what we're seeing now, how sin has become not only accepted, but celebrated. How good is called evil and evil good. How entertainment mocks holiness and culture silences conscience. How churches are filled with forms of godliness, but lack the power thereof. How the sacred is trampled under the feet of pride and pleasure. It's not just individual people turning from God, it's entire systems, entire nations, entire cultures rebranding wickedness as freedom and self-worship as virtue. We're living in days where people love themselves more than truth, more than family, more than anything. Lovers of money, boastful, arrogant, disobedient, ungrateful, brutal. Just like Paul said in his second letter to Timothy. It's not a distant warning, it's a mirror. And sometimes, when I watch the news or scroll through the endless digital noise, I feel like I'm watching a slow-motion replay of Sodom. People parading sin in the streets, targeting the innocent, twisting justice, redefining truth. And it breaks my heart because I know that just like in the days of Noah, just like in the days of Lot, judgment won't come with a loud warning or a red countdown. It will come suddenly, unexpectedly. And the only ones who will escape are those who, like Noah and Lot, listen to the quiet voice of God, follow the narrow road, and separate themselves from the wickedness around them. But that's not easy, is it? Because the culture tells you to fit in, to stay silent, to not judge, to tolerate everything. But the Bible never called us to comfort. It called us to holiness. And holiness, in a world like this, is offensive. It stings. It divides. But it also saves. I remember one night I was walking alone under the stars, praying, struggling with the weight of this message. I asked God why judgment had to be so severe in Noah's day. Why fire had to fall on Sodom. And in that stillness the answer came, not as an audible voice, but as a piercing realization, because sin had consumed everything. In Noah's day, the earth was full of violence. Every thought of every heart was only evil continually. The corruption wasn't superficial, it was total. It was like a disease that had spread to every cell, and God, the great physician, had to amputate to preserve life. In Lot's time, the wickedness had reached such extremes that the men of the city tried to violate heavenly beings. That's how far their hearts had gone. There was no fear of God, no respect for righteousness, just a lust for power, for pleasure, for perversion. And when a people reaches that point, when they despise even the idea of goodness, there remains no remedy but judgment. That's hard to hear, isn't it? Because we want a gentle God, a tolerant God, a soft God. But the God of the Bible is holy. He is patient beyond measure, but he will not be mocked. His mercy is long, but it is not infinite. There comes a point where he says, "Enough." And I believe, with everything in me, that we are nearing that point again. I don't say that to scare you. I say that because I've tasted his grace, and I don't want anyone to miss it. I've lived long enough to know that pleasures fade, that wealth disappears, that applause is hollow. But the presence of God, that's eternal. That's worth everything. And that's what Noah knew when he kept building in the face of ridicule. That's what Lot remembered when he turned his back on a city of fire. That's what we must hold on to today, no matter what the world says, no matter how lonely it gets, no matter how tempting compromise may feel. Because when the rain begins to fall, when the fire begins to burn, it will be too late to change sides. I believe we are in the days of warning, the days of mercy. The ark is still open. The angels are still leading, but the door will not remain open forever. One day, it will shut. One day, the skies will break open. One day, the Son of Man will return, and the world will never be the same. So I urge you, wake up. Look around. Listen. Don't be lulled to sleep by the rhythm of a dying world. Don't be fooled by the illusion of peace when sin reigns. Don't trade eternal truth for temporary comfort. Choose the narrow way. Build your ark. Flee Sodom. Cry out to God while he may still be found. Because the days of Noah are here, the days of Lot are rising, and the time is short. My dear friends, let us journey together through a revelation that is unfolding not in secret, not in some distant land, not in a future far off, but here, now, in our very generation. You see, there was a time when the warnings spoken of in ancient texts seemed abstract, even poetic, like tales of old spoken by elders who had seen the world in a different light. But now, what was once considered prophecy is no longer cloaked in metaphor or hidden in mystery. It is here plain to see, alive in the world around us. It speaks in the language of modern life. It pulses through our cities, our homes, our relationships, and even through the screens that connect us. I have walked through the streets of this world and felt the weight of its weariness. I have watched people walking past one another like shadows, their eyes bright with distraction, but dull with emptiness. I have seen how the spirit of the age has crept into hearts and minds and has made its home there. And though I am not a prophet nor a preacher, I am a witness to the unraveling of a world that once knew innocence, a world that once cherished dignity, respect, and compassion. Once upon a time, not long ago, there was an unspoken bond among people. Even strangers could sense a moral line that ought not be crossed. Children looked up to their parents with admiration, and communities carried each other's burdens. There was reverence for the elderly, humility in success, and shame in wrongdoing. But now something has shifted, deeply, drastically. Over the past 2 decades, especially since the birth and rise of the internet, We have witnessed not just a change in culture, but a collapse in conscience. The digital world promised us connection, but instead, it opened a floodgate to every form of indulgence. No longer do people merely stumble into darkness. They seek it, they share it, and they sell it. What was once shameful is now marketed as entertainment. What was once hidden in secrecy is now flaunted proudly for attention. You see, the walls that once protected society, the sacred walls of morality, have crumbled. And when those walls fall, all manner of chaos floods in. Pornography, once whispered about in hushed tones, is now a billion-dollar industry, promoted through advertisements, films, music, and even education. It is on the devices of children before they even understand what innocence is. Violence, once considered tragic, is now glorified, dramatized, gamified, and televised for pleasure. Young hearts grow cold, desensitized by what they see day after day. We no longer flinch when we hear of murder, abuse, betrayal, or corruption. It is as though the soul of the world has been numbed by its own reflection. I remember a time, not too long ago, when people would stop and help a stranger on the road. Now they record them, mock them, and scroll past. Empathy is fading. Compassion has been outsourced, justice is commercialized, and truth. Truth has become subjective, twisted, and politicized until it no longer bears any resemblance to what it once was. And why? Because morality, the foundation of right and wrong, has been replaced by personal preference. What is right for one is offensive to another. The compass that once pointed toward honor, integrity, and righteousness is now spinning wildly in every direction. And when morality is lost, society cannot stand. The collapse is inevitable. When people are no longer guided by conscience, when leaders are no longer restrained by integrity, when families are no longer anchored in love, what remains to hold a nation together? Nothing. We are witnessing the slow, systematic collapse of the very fabric that held civilization together. But we were warned. Oh yes, this moment was foreseen. It was spoken of not in fear, but in clarity. The signs of the times were given not to terrify us, but to awaken us. Long ago, it was foretold that in the last days, men would be lovers of themselves, self-obsessed, boastful, proud, and arrogant. Look around today and tell me it is not so. Never before in human history has the self been so exalted, so worshipped. We have built altars to our own image. Social media is not just a tool. It is a stage, a sanctuary of self-glorification. Every post, every like, every comment feeds the ego. People no longer ask, "Is this true?" They ask, "Will this go viral?" We live in the age of curated personas, where truth is sacrificed on the altar of popularity. Humility is mocked. Simplicity is boring. Modesty is outdated. And kindness, real kindness, is often mistaken for weakness. The very virtues that once made a person honorable are now viewed as obstacles to success. And the tragedy of it all is not just that the world celebrates this self-idolatry, but that it no longer recognizes it as a problem. We teach children to express themselves, but not to restrain themselves. We encourage them to follow their hearts, but not to guard their hearts. We reward those who speak loudest, not those who speak wisely. And in doing so, we have raised a generation that knows how to perform, but not how to persevere, how to entertain, but not how to endure, how to impress, but not how to impact. I do not say this with condemnation. I say this with heartbreak. For I see the pain behind the filters, the emptiness behind the applause, the loneliness behind the followers. We were not created to be worshippers of ourselves. We were created for something greater, something eternal. But in our search for identity, we have become lost in our own reflection. And so the world spirals deeper into chaos. But here's what many do not understand. Morality is not just a religious concept. It is the invisible force that holds relationships, families, communities, and nations together. When morality disappears, so does trust. When trust disappears, so does unity. And when unity disappears, all that remains is fear, division, and decay. The danger of this moment in history is not just the rise of immorality, it is the normalization of it. We have not only abandoned righteousness, we have redefined wickedness as freedom, sin as empowerment, and rebellion as courage. And yet, through all this, there remains a whisper, a still, small voice calling us back. For even now, in this age of noise and pride, there are those who hear it. There are those who feel the burden in their spirit, who cannot ignore the ache in their soul when they see the world burning around them. These are the ones who have not bowed to the spirit of the age, who still believe in truth, who still cry out for justice, not the justice of men, but the justice of heaven. And I say to those who feel weary, who feel alone, who feel overwhelmed by the darkness, do not give up. Do not be silent. This is your time. You were born for this generation not by accident, but by divine design. Your voice matters. Your prayers matter. Your courage matters. It may seem like the darkness is winning, but light is most powerful when it shines in the dark. You are that light. This world needs more than opinions. It needs examples. It needs men and women who will stand when others bow, who will speak when others are silent, who will love when others hate, who will live with conviction when others drift with the tide. We do not need more influencers. We need more intercessors. We do not need more performers. We need more prophets. The time of pretending is over. The time of playing it safe is over. It is time to rise, not in anger, but in authority, not in fear, but in faith, not in pride, but in power, the power that comes from knowing who you are and whose you are. So let the world rage, let it mock, let it push back. But let us remain steadfast. For though the storm may rage around us, we stand on a rock that cannot be shaken. And no matter how dark the night may get, morning always comes. Keep your lamp full. Keep your heart pure. Keep your eyes fixed, not on the chaos, but on the call. Because in the end, when the world is crumbling, when the kingdoms of men fall, when every false god is exposed, only one truth will remain. And those who walked in that truth, who lived by it, who loved it, will shine like the stars forever. So take heart. This is not the end, it is the awakening. In the stillness of early morning, before the noise of the world begins, I sometimes sit with my Bible open to 2 Timothy chapter 3, and I cannot help but feel the weight of what the Apostle Paul wrote centuries ago, as if his words were not ancient at all, but written for this very hour, for this generation, for this world we are walking through. His voice echoes through time, warning of a period not just marked by war or famine or political unrest, but by something even more terrifying, the complete and utter reversal of moral values, a time when what is good is mocked and what is evil is celebrated. And so, as I breathe in the silence and reflect, a flood of understanding pours over me, and I begin to see the fabric of our society unraveling thread by thread, just as Paul said it would. He spoke not just as a man, but as a vessel carrying divine insight. And in his warning, he described the end times, not with symbols or beasts, but through the character of humanity, through the twisted mirror of people's hearts. He broke it down in ways that we can now so clearly see. 4 categories that paint the picture of the last days with chilling accuracy. The first is perhaps the most obvious, yet the most insidious. It is the elevation of self, the rise of extreme individualism, where the cry of every heart is no longer, "Your will be done," but "My truth, my way, my life." People have become lovers of themselves, and not in the simple sense of healthy self-esteem, but in a grotesque, bloated version of self-worship. I look around and see it everywhere, in how people speak, how they act, how they present their lives to the world. Social media has become a stage, and each person plays both the star and the director of their own never-ending performance. We are taught to chase likes, followers, and attention as if they were oxygen. Pride is no longer a vice, it is a virtue. Boasting is no longer frowned upon. It is marketed and monetized. People flaunt their wealth, their bodies, their opinions, their every move, and call it authenticity. But what it really is a sickness of the soul. I remember a time, even just a couple of decades ago, when humility was something to strive for. When children were taught to listen more than they spoke. When athletes who scored a goal or made a winning shot bowed their heads instead of beating their chests. But today, children are told they are the center of the universe before they even understand what the universe is. Adults walk around as if the world owes them something, and the concept of self-sacrifice is laughed at as weakness. It is not just pride, it is the dethroning of God and the coronation of the self. And if you dare to speak against it, if you dare to say that there is something bigger than self, you are labeled as judgmental or outdated. This is not progress. It is regression into a darker age than we've ever known. The second sign Paul gives us is the collapse of the very fabric that holds humanity together. Relationships, family, community. He speaks of children who no longer obey their parents, people who are ungrateful, unholy, without love, unwilling to forgive. And I feel that in my bones. I look at families that no longer eat together, homes filled with silence instead of laughter, siblings who have become strangers, and children who no longer know the voices of their own fathers. Disobedience is encouraged, not corrected. Gratitude is viewed as optional. We now raise children with every material comfort, but starve them emotionally and spiritually. Parents are afraid to discipline, afraid to guide, afraid to say no, and as a result, we now see generations growing up with no moral compass. And outside the home, it is no better. Friendships are shallow, easily broken, based more on shared interests than shared values. Communities once built on trust and loyalty are now divided by politics, social status, and petty grievances. People slander each other without remorse. Forgiveness is rare, and vengeance is seen as strength. We no longer protect one another. We protect ourselves from one another. It used to be that when someone fell, others helped them up. Now people record it on their phones and laugh. The erosion of empathy is perhaps one of the most dangerous signs of our time. I walk through streets lined with people but feel more alone than ever, because true connection has been replaced with curated interactions and filtered conversations. The bonds of humanity are dissolving, and in their place grows a cold, hard wall of indifference. It is not simply a cultural problem, it is a spiritual one. Then Paul speaks of a life out of control, a world intoxicated with its own corruption, where self-restraint is thrown away and wickedness is embraced not only in secret, but in the open. These are people who love pleasure more than they love God. And this hits hard because it is perhaps the most visible and celebrated part of our modern culture. The entertainment industry thrives on sex, violence, and rebellion. What once was hidden in darkness is now the centerpiece of our screens. Children grow up watching movies and playing games that glorify murder, lust, revenge, and greed. Adults feed on reality shows that reward betrayal and deception. Pornography is no longer taboo. It is mainstream. Music videos teach young minds that their worth lies in their bodies and their ability to provoke lust. The more outrageous the behavior, the more fame it brings. And if you try to speak about purity, about holiness, about self-control, you are mocked. I have watched people laugh at righteousness as if it were a joke, and yet they cry when they are alone at night, unable to explain the emptiness that consumes them. The soul was never meant to feed on filth, and when it does, it withers. But our world doesn't see that. We have made gods out of our desires and kneel before altars of momentary satisfaction. This is a world that says, "Follow your heart," without ever realizing that the heart, when left unchecked, can be deceitful and destructive. We have traded eternal truth for temporary thrills, and in doing so, we have lost ourselves. Finally, Paul unveils the most deceptive sign of all, a form of godliness without its power. He describes people who appear religious, who say all the right words, who look the part, but whose lives are empty of true faith. They go to church, but their hearts are far from God. They speak of love, but harbor hatred. They teach others, yet refuse to be taught themselves. I have seen it firsthand. Men and women who preach with passion but live in secret sin. Ministries built not on truth, but on manipulation. Platforms used to exploit rather than serve. There are people today who wear the mask of spirituality, but deny the very spirit they claim to follow. They pray in public, but scheme in private. They learn more and more, read every book, attend every conference, and yet never come to the knowledge of truth, because their hearts are closed. They pull in the weak, those who are hurting and searching, especially women who carry wounds and are looking for hope, and instead of healing them, they use them. It is not just sad, it is evil, and this false religion is growing. It looks like light, but it is darkness. It speaks peace, but causes chaos. It offers hope, but delivers bondage. And the world, desperate for meaning, eats it up without question. The scariest thing is that these people often don't even realize they are lost. They believe they are serving God, when in fact they are serving themselves. It is a delusion so strong that even the elect could be deceived if they are not watchful. As I sit and let all this wash over me, I realize how painfully accurate Paul's prophecy is. It is no longer a distant warning. It is a present reality. We live in a world that celebrates sin and shames holiness, a world that is upside down. The values we once held sacred, honesty, loyalty, kindness, chastity, humility, are now seen as outdated or even oppressive. Technology, which could have united us and spread truth, has instead accelerated our descent into moral chaos. Lies spread faster than truth. Outrage is louder than reason. Emotion overrules wisdom. The devil no longer needs to hide. He is welcomed and praised in the open. And yet amid all this darkness, there is a quiet but unshakable light. The truth of God remains. The word still speaks. And though the world may reject it, those who have ears to hear will recognize its call. This is not the time for silence. This is not the time to conform. This is the time to stand, to speak, to live in such a way that the contrast between truth and deception becomes undeniable. Not with arrogance, but with humility. Not with fear, but with courage. Because while the days grow darker, the light within us must grow brighter. This isn't just a story. This is our reality. And we must choose, each day, whom we will serve. In the beginning, when the heavens and the earth were still fresh with the breath of the Creator, there was harmony, beauty, and divine order. God, in His infinite wisdom and love, designed the world not as a place of chaos or confusion, but as a sacred space where truth, justice, and righteousness would reign. Mankind was created in His own image, bearing not only physical form but spiritual purpose. The breath that gave Adam life was not merely air, it was a spark of holiness, a reflection of God's moral nature. In that garden, Before the fall, morality was not a set of rules. It was the natural state of being. It was woven into every word spoken, every step taken, every thought conceived. But as time moved on, and the serpent slithered in, temptation birthed rebellion. That single act of defiance in Eden was not about a fruit. It was about the rejection of God's moral authority. From that moment, a crack appeared in the fabric of creation. And though generations passed, and mankind grew in number and knowledge, that crack widened into a chasm, one that separated man from his maker and drove the human heart into ever-deepening shadows. It is this very descent that stirs the righteous anger of God, not because he is a tyrant, not because he desires to dominate, but because he loves deeply, purely, and passionately. He knows the cost of sin. He sees what immorality does to the soul, the family, the society, the very essence of life. When morality is removed, when truth is trampled underfoot, when conscience is seared and the sacred is profaned, the world does not stand still. It begins to rot from the inside out. Families disintegrate like sandcastles against the tide. Children grow up without the security of love, discipline, and godly example. Mothers weep in silence, fathers abandon their posts, and the innocent are sacrificed on the altar of personal pleasure. A society that once cherished virtue now celebrates vice. Good is called evil, and evil is paraded as good. The people rejoice in their so-called freedom, not realizing they are shackled by chains of their own making. They laugh, they dance, they mock, unaware that they are feasting at the edge of a cliff. The damage is not only external, it seeps deep into the soul. People become numb to compassion, desensitized to suffering, intoxicated with selfish gain. The moral compass is shattered, and each man becomes a god unto himself, deciding right and wrong based on desire, not truth. In such a world, exploitation becomes common, deceit becomes strategy, and violence becomes entertainment. Immorality is not passive, it is predatory. It consumes relationships, devours trust, and leaves a trail of heartbreak in its wake. And God, in his infinite mercy, watches. He warns. He sends messengers, dreams, stirrings in the spirit. But the world, caught in its frenzy, pays no heed. It is the same story, repeated across the ages. In the days of Noah, the people ate, drank, married, and lived as if nothing was wrong, while wickedness filled the earth. The imagination of man was evil continuously. God's heart was grieved, not because he was surprised, but because his love was rejected. The ark stood as a silent testimony of mercy, a floating sermon in wood and pitch, yet none listened. The rain came, and only 8 souls were saved. In the days of Lot, the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah were swollen with pride, sexual perversion, and violence. The cries of the oppressed rose to heaven, and God sent angels, not to judge first, but to rescue. Yet even then the people mocked the messengers, and fire rained from heaven. These were not just stories, they were warnings, memorials carved into the landscape of history to remind us of what happens when a people turn their backs on divine morality. Today we find ourselves walking that same path, often without even realizing it. The signs are everywhere. Pornography is normalized, divorce is routine, greed is applauded, and violence is glorified. Children are confused about their identity, schools abandon truth, and churches grow silent, afraid to offend. The world has grown cold, not due to lack of information, but due to the absence of wisdom. We have built towers of technology, but torn down the walls of integrity. We have found ways to explore the stars, but cannot find peace in our homes. The prophecy is unfolding, not in secret chambers, but on the front pages of our daily lives. The spiritual numbness that once crept in has now overtaken entire cultures. We are as in the days of Noah and Lot. not because of isolated events, but because of a widespread moral decay that poisons everything it touches. But hear this, not all is lost. For even in judgment God remembers mercy. He is not a God who delights in punishment. He is a father who longs for his children to come home. The anger of God toward immorality is the fierce love of a creator who cannot bear to see his masterpiece defaced. It is the righteous jealousy of one who knows that nothing else will satisfy the human soul but him. And so he calls, not with thunder alone, but with whispers, with quiet moments of conviction, with people who still dare to speak the truth in love. I have seen it with my own eyes. I have walked among the broken, those shattered by immorality, young girls whose innocence was stolen, men addicted to secret sin, families torn apart by betrayal. I have sat with the weeping, heard their regrets, and witnessed the long road of restoration. But I have also seen redemption. I have seen the addict become a leader, the unfaithful become faithful, the wounded become healers. This is the miracle of returning to God's moral design. It is not just about rules. It is about rescue. It is not just about obedience. It is about restoration. God's laws are not chains. They are the lifelines that pull us from drowning. They are the boundaries that keep us from driving off cliffs. They are the whispers of heaven in a world gone mad. And yet, so many still resist. They argue, rationalize, redefine, and demand acceptance of their own truths. But truth is not a matter of opinion. It is a person, and that person is holy. The world can change its definitions, but it cannot escape the consequences. The Creator set the universe in order, and no amount of rebellion can undo that order without cost. Like gravity, his moral law remains constant. You can deny it, but you will still fall. We are living in borrowed time. The clock is ticking, not with fear, but with urgency. The ark is being built again, not of wood, but of words, of warnings, of wake-up calls. The fire is being held back, not by human effort, but by divine mercy. But the day will come. It always does. The rain will fall, the fire will descend, and only those who have turned, only those who have remembered the sacred, will stand. This is not about religion, it is about reality. This is not about control, it is about compassion. God does not call us to morality because he needs it, but because we do. We were made to thrive in righteousness, to flourish in obedience, to rejoice in purity. Anything less is a counterfeit, a shadow, a trap. And so I plead, not with condemnation, but with compassion. Turn back, look around, see the signs. Feel the ache in your own soul. There is still time. The door is not yet shut. The angels still walk among us. The Spirit still speaks. Return to the path of life. Reclaim what was lost. Choose the narrow road, for though it is hard, it leads to joy unspeakable. And above all, remember this: the hatred of God for immorality is not the end of the story. It is the beginning of hope, for it means he still cares, he still watches, he still loves. If he were indifferent, we would be lost forever. But because he is moved, because he is holy, because he is our Father, there is still hope for redemption. ChatGPT said, "We have reached a point in history where the spiritual battle is no longer hidden. It is right before our eyes, waging war in our homes, schools, governments, media, and even our hearts. The warnings are not subtle. The signs are not whispered. They are screaming at us from every corner of the culture, begging us to open our eyes and see the truth for what it is. What was once unthinkable is now normalized. What once caused shame now receives applause, and what was once sacred is now mocked and desecrated. But even in the midst of this darkness, there remains a light, a flicker of truth that refuses to be extinguished. That light is the Word of God, and its message has not changed, no matter how much the world around us has. If you've made it this far into this message, it is not by accident. There is something in your spirit that knows, something deep down that cannot be silenced. You feel the shaking. You see the decay. You know something is wrong. This sense of urgency is not just emotion, it is a call to return, a call to repent, a call to rise. We were not placed in this generation to hide in fear or watch the world burn from a distance. We were born for such a time as this, to be light in the darkness, salt in the decay, and truth in the age of deception. We have been warned, but we have also been empowered. The Bible never promised that the end times would be comfortable or easy. In fact, it told us the opposite, that perilous times would come, that evil would increase, that love would grow cold, but it also said that those who endure to the end shall be saved. It promised that God would pour out His Spirit in the last days, that sons and daughters would prophesy, that young men would see visions, that old men would dream dreams, and that everyone who calls on the name of the Lord will be saved. The very chaos we see around us is the stage being set for the greatest harvest of souls the world has ever known. So this is not the time to be silent. It is not the time to be indifferent. It is not the time to be spiritually asleep. This is the time to awaken, to armor up, to speak boldly, love radically, and live righteously. This is the time to raise your children in truth, to guard your heart with discernment, and to fix your eyes on the one who holds eternity in His hands. We must stop looking to broken systems and fallen men to save us. The government will not fix this. Technology will not save us. Philosophies, trends, and feel-good movements will not carry us through the storm that is coming. Only the firm foundation of God's truth will endure. We are watching the world crumble under the weight of its rebellion. We are watching prophecy unfold in real time. And yet, even now, the grace of God is extended. Even now, the invitation is open. Even now, the door of mercy has not yet closed. But make no mistake, it will not remain open forever. The days of playing church are over. The time of casual Christianity is done. The Lord is separating the wheat from the chaff, the sheep from the goats, the faithful from the fake. And when He returns, and He will return, He will not come as a humble servant riding a donkey. He will come as a conquering king on a white horse, with fire in His eyes and judgment in His hand. So where do you stand? Not where you used to stand, not where you plan to stand one day, but where you are standing right now. Because the truth is, neutrality is not an option. Indecision is a decision. You are either for Him or against Him. You are either walking in the light or hiding in the shadows. The time for lukewarm faith has ended. This is the hour of decision, the hour of awakening, the hour of reckoning, not just for the world, but for each of us. We are not promised tomorrow. The next headline could change everything. The next tragedy could strike closer than we think. The next tremor in the earth could be the beginning of the shaking. What we do now, how we live now, matters for eternity. This isn't just about avoiding the wrath to come. This is about living a life that reflects the glory and power of the one who created us. It's about returning to the heart of worship, to the holiness of His presence, to the simplicity of truth and the beauty of obedience. Don't be distracted. Don't be deceived. Don't be lulled into apathy by the comforts of this world. There is a greater reality unfolding, a kingdom not of this earth, a king whose reign will never end, and a call that echoes through the noise. Come out from among them and be separate. Be holy as he is holy. Stand when others bow. Speak when others are silent. Love when others hate. Shine when others hide. Because in the end, it will not matter how popular you were, how rich you became, or how many followers you had. What will matter is whether you knew him, whether you followed him, and whether your life bore witness to the truth. So if you're listening to this, let it stir you. Let it move you. Let it break the chains of complacency and ignite a fire that cannot be quenched. The days ahead will not be easy, but they will be glorious for those who walk in truth. We are not victims. We are not abandoned. We are not powerless. We are the remnant. The warriors, the watchmen on the wall, and though the darkness grows, the light will shine brighter. So rise up, child of God. The time is now. The battle is real. And the King is coming